Hello, and thank you for joining today's Maclean's Education Summit Fireside Chat with Dr. Elka Walsh about the intersection of technology and learning. Dr. Walsh is a leader in education with over 20 years of experience, ranging from executive positions at colleges and polytechnics to Chief Education and Learning Officer at one of Canada's largest science centers as founder of UDiscover Learning Inc. Currently, as Associate Vice President, Teaching, Learning, and Digital Transformation, Education Industry with Microsoft Canada. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Walsh.
Thanks so much for having me.
Wonderful. So now I'd like to introduce Maclean's Editor-in-Chief, Sarah Fulford. Thank you both again, and take it away, Sarah.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Chantal, and thank you to everybody for joining us. I'm wondering, Elka, if you could begin by telling us a little bit about your role. So what is the role? What are your responsibilities? And why is it important to Microsoft that someone like you is part of the company?
Yeah. I think one of the most incredible opportunities to help build capacity across Canada. So I work with the K-12 school boards as well as the colleges, polytechnics, and universities across the country to help them with the art of the possible for the future of teaching and learning, and particularly for how they can empower themselves as educators as well as their students with digital transformation. And I think that's where we are really in at this moment in time. And at Microsoft, we're on a mission to empower every single learner on the planet to achieve more. And this is that kind of connection opportunity. When we think about how can we empower every person, every organization, and how that relates to education, that's where I get to bring to bear my passion for experiential learning and empowering every single learner.
How would you describe the state of tech in the learning experience right now? I mean, obviously K to 12 is a very different thing than post-secondary, but if you were to give me sort of a state of the union of education technology in Canada, what are the top of mind aspects?
We sit at this moment in time where there is so much change happening and a beautiful opportunity to really start exploring how do we achieve the things that as educators we've wanted to do. The personalization of learning, the ability to engage every single learner. And the technology is now in a place where we can start doing that. But, in some respects, we're still in the early days in some locations of adoption. And in some other areas where we're seeing some beautiful pockets of innovation starting to emerge. And so I think what the opportunity that faces us is that because it's a small sector and we're able to learn from each other, it's a community. And I think this is the incredible opportunity where there's a lot of learning happening about those innovations and where those opportunities are. Good questions are being asked, and I'm seeing some beautiful things all the way from here in Calgary, where I'm located today, with a relationship and a collaboration with the Calgary Board of Education, where coming out of the pandemic, they wanted to reignite imagination and engage their learners and develop a connection to the community. So 15,000 students and almost 1,000 educators participated in a Minecraft design build challenge in partnership with the City of Calgary and Calgary Board of Education. An incredible opportunity to develop out those civic engagement skills and connection to community, all the way to some of the other areas where I see, like at Seneca Polytechnic, where they're engaging students in post-secondary education to help them develop out the skills that are needed for the digital economy, from cybersecurity to AI and data analytics. So some great examples of how we're seeing institutions start to think about how do they connect differently and start contributing to both developing out the good citizens as well as the digital skills that are needed to propel Canada forward.
So let's stick to the K to 12 space for a minute, and then we'll get to post-secondary. What do you think, you mentioned the Calgary School Board. What do you think the school boards learned in the pandemic about digital learning? I know in my region in Ontario, there's now a mandate for kids in the high school level to take online credit, or two, I can't remember, and you have to actively opt out. So that's a dramatic change. I know suddenly kids are being equipped with laptops in a way that they weren't before. And I'm wondering if there were any sort of big pandemic lessons that are now being implemented in that age group among school boards.
Yeah. We're seeing some really interesting things. And I think that the core learning that came out of the pandemic is the opportunity of digital experiences that create more opportunity for collaboration, the kind of collaborative learning that engages students in multiple ways, and particularly from an inclusion perspective. When I think about how can we engage every single learner, what we were learning during the pandemic was the digital tools that are available to them enable students who may face barrier, maybe learning disability as an example. And I have two sons, and both my sons have dyslexia. And so what I saw with them was empowerment with the tools that they were now able to use without stigma. And so this is an incredible opportunity when we think about what we were learning in the pandemic and now how that translates into our day-to-day. Into our day-to-day as we come out of this, the opportunity for those digital experiences, one, so that they're collaborating. And I think about, I've seen many school boards start using Teams and within the Teams environment, leveraging chat features and as well as translation opportunities. So students who may come from homes where English is a second language, they now have an opportunity to participate where teachers are using these tools to communicate with parents and with the student, and really now creating a really vibrant learning community. Another way when I think again about removing barrier, it's this opportunity we've realized that these tools are now much more ubiquitously available. So, seeing the opportunity and the recognition that we can remove barriers, not just with a universal design of learning, but really the inclusively designed opportunities that the technology now enables.
And are educators empowered to use all those tools? Are there barriers for the teachers in learning how to empower their students?
Yeah, Sarah, we did a survey recently over the summer, and teachers were telling us that they know that digital skills are important for their students, but they're also not getting the professional learning opportunities that they need in order to make that come to life within their classrooms. And so it's important that we start investing in their skill sets. We know it's important, the digital skills, the digital citizenship for students, but having that opportunity for the educators to also come because there's so much change happening. So how can we empower them? And I think that's where partnership matters. That's where the collaboration between companies like Microsoft and the school boards, and we've been doing a lot of that work. When I mentioned the Calgary Board of Education, there was a lot of effort to help the educators feel comfortable with the Minecraft technology so they could design learning with it. And we do the same with many other aspects to ensure that faculty, educators can access in real time. So, we often will encourage education leaders to spend time to develop out some of those professional learning opportunities, create those moments of learning for educators. And that's where we've provided a lot of free opportunities for educators to go in real time as they need support. If they want to think about, as an example, how might I use OneNote to create multimodal learning opportunities? Because OneNote does videos as well as voice capture and speech to text and text to speech, drawing and inking on the computer, which is incredible for so many different learners. Well, they can go down over to Microsoft Learn and utilize a lot of the real-time tools that we have to support that learning. And they're telling us they need it. And that's why we've been investing in it. We know that without good teaching practice, it's not going to change for the learners. And so the two go hand in hand.
That's really cool because even with the younger teachers, there's like a generational divide because things move so fast. You mentioned in passing something called personalization of learning. What does that mean?
Yeah. There's been so much talk about personalization. And for some folks, it means having a technology that's going to mete out content as the student is ready to master the next level. For me, it goes much deeper than that. For me, it's so much more around How do we recognize the individual needs of the student, from the tools that they may uniquely need to remove barrier, or the opportunities for them to collaborate in unique ways that make sense for them, to get support when they need support. These are, for me, the opportunity where we can create those personal experiences. The opportunity that that gives us is a way to engage students in ways that they haven't been able to engage before. We know that engagement matters for student success. If they feel they can engage with their peers and with the content and with their educator, that they're able to create a more thriving learning experience, more student success. But we also know that there are new tools that actually enable us to make that possible. So I think about AI as an example. University of New South Wales has done some incredible work to change the curve in terms of how they're supporting students progress through their courses and get the kind of personal support that they need. So within their Faculty of Engineering, they have, in collaboration with us, developed a QBot. And QBot creates personalized learning packs unique to each individual student, depending on the kinds of questions they've been asking, and it's learned from the questions, and it's learned from how they've performed on previous assessments to make recommendations to them how they can prepare for the future assessments that they might have in their course. Huge impact there. Huge impact in terms of increased course grade point averages, as well as student engagement levels that are being surveyed. It's a beautiful example of what's possible when we think about how do we see every student uniquely. When I also think then about those inclusion technologies that now are built in, that opportunity for students, again, who may be able to, if they're participating in a lecture, that they can have live captions so they can participate if they have hearing barrier, as an example. Or even if they just want to hit record so that they can go back and review. These are all opportunities that create good learning practice. But it's also something then that's unique to each and every student. Ways then that really empower them to make decisions for themselves about how they want to engage in their learning.
If the technology themselves can be empowering and unlock access opportunities, is there any limitation to accessing the technology itself? So we know school boards can be a bit strapped for cash. That's certainly the case in my province. There are many ways to get tech into the hands of students. What are you seeing across the country that's working, and where do you think we have room for improvement?
Yeah. So first off, the Microsoft, the Microsoft Office suite is available for free to every single student in the country. So that's one way that we're removing that barrier. And that's important because these are ways that we can help with literacy, with Word and with PowerPoint, development of those communication skills and being supportive. So some of the other things that are possible there is the way that we can create more effectiveness so that every student has those opportunities. And I talked about those inclusion tools, right? Those inclusion tools that are built in. So they're not add-ons. They're not things that you have to go out and search for. So if a student who has dyslexia needs speech to text and text to speech, this isn't an additional payment that the school board needs to make. It's built right into that technology for the students, right into Word as an example, so they're able to utilize it. And, I think it's these sorts of opportunities as we think about how do we truly empower every single learner on the planet. It's these opportunities of how the technology is being built in, that there are no add-ons. And this way, what we're able to do is also think about how do we design for the many? That's with a universal design of learning opportunity. But what it also enables us to do is as an example with Teams, when a school board is using Teams, there are so many elements and features that are built right in. So as an example with translation, that's not an add-on. That is something that's right there that enables everyone to come together in ways that removes barrier, but is also ubiquitously accessible. And it's those opportunities, I think, when I think about How do we empower every single learner? When we are looking at low band usage in areas that may not have Wi-Fi, again, opportunities for us to be leveraging the technology to do that. So lots of ways that we can be reaching then into so many places. And when I think about the democratization of access to learning and to technology, and really, I think it's the technology that enables us to do this, where it is in so many ways we're able to reach then students in remote areas as well as underprivileged populations that don't typically participate. There are some beautiful examples in India as an example where with our translation tools that went from the Indian government to being accessible in villages and remote villages that wouldn't typically have access to these things. So it's a way that we can lift tides and lift opportunity. And I think that's the incredible moment in time that we find ourselves in. The technology is now enabling us and empowering every single person to come to these opportunities.
You mentioned working in spaces where there is low band usage.
Mhm.
So, do you have stories to share or experiences about what that's been like to have Microsoft work with school boards or institutions in such areas?
Yeah. This is about really a collaboration. There are so many ways when we think about how each community has its uniqueness. And I mentioned about Calgary Board of Education and the work that they're doing and the unique impact they want to have in their community. When we think about some of the other locations, and as a company, we've been working with the government of Nunavut as an example with translation, so that Inuktitut can be utilized there in the territory. These are opportunities. So if you were to go into Teams as an example, you can access Inuktitut translation or in Word. So these are ways then that we're able to work together to really create impact in the community as they're thinking about these things and on their terms. And that's where the collaboration becomes so important. And it's really, I think, underpinning and listening, really listening carefully to what the community needs and how to make that possible for them.
That's extraordinary. Thanks for sharing that. I'm interested in the way you get feedback. So, like, who are you listening to? How are you interacting with your users and gathering input? I have a feeling like a fifth grader might tell you interesting things about the technology. What does that look like for Microsoft?
Yeah. There are so many ways that we are gaining this kind of feedback. Everything from the deep relationships that we have with educators. I speak with hundreds of educators on a weekly basis, education leaders across the country who have deep relationships with us and share the learnings with them. And our product teams, as they're developing, are listening very carefully and engaging. A beautiful example of one. I was just having a conversation with one of the product designers on Immersive Reader. And he was telling me a story of being in a classroom, learning from an educator about how she was using this with her grade school students. And I Immersive Reader is provides the opportunity to hear a reading passage. And it's also designed so that a student maybe with ADHD can isolate words so they're not becoming overwhelmed with some of the content, or a student with dyslexia so they can see the syllables as they're moving through the passage. What it also meant, though, was again, there's translation, and the teacher wasn't aware that it was there and was talking about this frustration of trying to help this one student. And the product designer, because we listened so carefully, was able to support them and help them see where the opportunity was to have the translation available for that student. And so we rely heavily on having those relationships, everything from the product designer through to those of us who are working day to day with the school boards and the educators and the education leaders.
So, I'm curious to know, as someone who's an evangelist for technology, if you think tech is ever a limit to learning. If it's a tool, all tools could be used for good and for ill. And I know there's a growing debate around, say, cell phone use in the classroom. Do you have any insights, given all your conversations with educators, about how to focus a kid's attention? And I really am now talking about still the grade 12 and under cohort, how they can focus their attention on technology that is leading to learning rather than distraction.
Yeah. You know, in this moment in time where we're engaged in this massive digital transformation, this is one of those moments for society and our economy where technology is a tool and a tool of empowerment. And I think about, often we'll hear many of those negative sides of how the technology might be distracting. But I come back to the idea of digital citizenship and in digital empowerment and the skills that students are going to need in order to thrive, and the way that as educators, we can be helping them to do just that. When I think about what that looks like then, technology provides us the opportunity to empower more people to engage and love their learning. And that survey that I mentioned earlier about in the summer that we did with 500 educators who told us that 48% of them tell us that the current teaching methods are inclusive. Now think about that. 48% say that the teaching methodologies are inclusive right now. 46% also feel that students are not being taught in ways that are responsive to their individual needs. So when I think about how technology can empower, when I think about, as an example, cell phones. Well, cell phones, if you have a student who has dysgraphia, as an example, or dyslexia, and note-taking is an issue for them, they're able to take a picture of the whiteboard instead, be able to upload that into their OneNote where they have other documentation and content that they're able to access. Well, now they're empowered to participate in the learning. Rather than sitting at the back of the classroom feeling like they just can't participate, that it's going past them and they're never going to succeed, because we know that when that happens, they also become stressed. They feel separated from the rest of their peers. They feel that they can't succeed. And when that happens, we know learning doesn't happen. And so I look at these technologies and I think the opportunity for us to engage and empower every single learner. Well, if we ban from the classroom laptops, well, think about the student with dyslexia again, who may need their speech to text and text to speech to participate, or a student who has low vision, who instead is able to take a voice capture of what's happening within the lecture. These, again, are opportunities. And when we think about that inclusive design opportunity, the technology is the thing that's going to enable us to empower every single learner with unique tools that they're going to need, removing stigma and removing barrier from them, and most importantly, making them feel that learning is something that they can participate in, that they're not separate from their peers, that in fact we have a fully welcoming learning community that recognize them for the unique individual that they are. And when I think about that, how we can transform a life, it's down the road that society is going to benefit from that we are going to benefit when we have empowered that individual to bring the thing that makes them great back into society.
That's such a fascinating answer. It's not one that I've heard. And I think this debate around cell phones in the classroom is just going to heat up. I suspect you have a really good op-ed in you to write on this subject, because that was passionate and persuasive. And I look forward to hearing your voice on this more in the future. Okay, so let's shift to post-secondary. And I'm going to ask you the same question about what we saw from K to 12. What big learning came out of, and transformations came out of, the pandemic? As you probably know, at Maclean's, we do this thing every year where we rank universities. And so it's part of my job to keep an eye on the post-secondary space. And what a big trend we're watching is the explosion of digital learning in post-secondary. It's like rapid fire, and people are able to get acquired degrees in different parts of the country at different stages in life while they have a full-time job. Those are some of the things I'm seeing. I'm curious to know what you're seeing in terms of just in the last 2-3 years, the transformation of the post-secondary space.
Yeah. A few things that we're seeing. When I think about the important role that post-secondary education plays for contributing to raising capacity within our communities, University of Calgary is a beautiful example of where we've worked very closely together with them, as well as with some of our other industry partners, including RBC and Sobeys and HCL Tech, to invest in the development of digital skills. And so University of Calgary, when we think about the shift in the economy that's been happening out here, and the opportunity of developing out the digital skills to support the growth of new sectors, particularly around technology. And technology is not just the tech sector, but really across the board, whether that's in healthcare, in energy, or in agriculture, and many other areas. Um, and so the University of Calgary has developed out a portfolio of skills development that is an add-on, an opportunity to expand opportunities. Lifelong learning really is what we're talking about, with short and intensive opportunities. Everything, again, from cybersecurity to data analytics to Azure cloud computing and how to do that within industry. It is an incredible opportunity, and they have actually trained over 30,000 people in just 2 years. It's an incredible example of the opportunity to raise capacity within a province and help make the shift into what the digital economy can look like. So I see that as an example. I think it's that sort of innovation where we see institutions willing to work with industry to have the most cutting edge technology, as well as the most leading edge curriculum, so that we can empower really every program area to participate. But the other element of this is the type of learning that we're seeing and the supports for students, whether that's in campus life or it's in ways that we are rethinking the way that assessment is being done, being more authentic, where we see virtual reality as an example being utilized in medical school training to decrease the time to mastery of skill sets. Some beautiful examples out of Case Western University as an example in the US, where VR has been used for medical students to help them with anatomy. And some great outcomes in terms of decreasing that time to mastery and doing so in a way that is more cost effective for the university as well. And so these are some great examples, right? Yeah.
It involves fewer corpses probably in the
virtual corpses, thank goodness.
Yes, exactly. You mentioned assessment and AI.
Yeah.
Or rather, you mentioned assessment. Obviously, this fall, university educators went into their classrooms filled with trepidation. How are we going to teach? I had a professor friends over for dinner in the end of August, going back to a college in the States, and they were like, what are we going to do? Because all our kids are going to create essays based on AI, and how are we going to monitor their progress? And the experience of writing an essay was such a seminal part of their education in terms of processing information and making it their own. You mentioned in passing authentic assessments, and I'd love to know what that means to you and what you're seeing out in the country. What does that look like this fall, this term?
Yeah. When I think about these things, I'm a political scientist. So let me put that on the table because, I was raised in the discipline of essay writing.
Yeah.
In some respects, it makes me excited because that process of developing an argument and critical analysis and thinking about how do we connect ideas together to persuade and to provide evidence for perspective. These are incredible skills that students, the knowledge, the skills, the attitudes that students will need. In our digital era, the opportunity of the essay remains. But what I'm seeing is some really interesting ways that we can make this more authentic. One is that I have seen some professors utilize AI to create an essay and then to challenge the students to critique it, to ask what's missing. What would they add? How would they make it more persuasive and add their own voice? I think
Mm.
these are opportunities where we can actually then really engage the individual to bring their unique perspectives to bear. And then what we're really doing is assessing the things that we really wanted to assess. We want to assess their ability to critically analyze. We want to assess their ability to create persuasion. And we want them to innovate and be creative. And so when they're able to build from the technology and provide that human oversight and that judgment, these are core critical skills. And when we did very recently our Work Trends Index, we surveyed 30,000 employers across the country. And they told us the top skill sets that are needed for the age of AI. And judgment and creativity and innovation, as well as critical analysis, were some of those top skill sets. So when I think about the age of the essay and how that can be enhanced actually with these large language models and generative AI, I think how we shift our thinking about what it is we're really trying to get from it is really important because it's not dead. And in fact, I think we have this incredible opportunity to challenge students to go even deeper.
That's so interesting. And of course, it's not like the essays that we wrote in undergrad were the most creative things ever, right? Like they were also a bit formulaic. So, but that teacher who is using essays to, using AI generated essays to criticize them and analyze them is quite genius. Um, there's an expression that has emerged over the last few months that I've heard quite a lot, which is that AI is not going to replace your job, but someone who knows how to use AI is going to replace you. What do you make of that statement? Do you think it's true? When you think about training the next generation of leaders, is part of what they need to do in whatever sector they're in, learning how to use AI in their fields?
There's some incredible examples. There is it's the era of co-pilots, is how I think about this. And what it does is it enables us to be more effective and efficient in our work. As an example, I had a PowerPoint presentation. I asked my co-pilot to develop out for me a LinkedIn post of 150 words. And it took my PowerPoint and summarized for me so that I could more quickly get to post that and do it more in a more timely way. It's a great opportunity when we think about how do we help those knowledge workers expand their capacity and do more to have greater impact. And there's some other research when we think about co-pilots and GitHub as an example. Andre Karpathy, who is one of those exceptional AI developers, and he was talking about how GitHub helps him develop. GitHub Copilot helps him in his development of coding. That's an example of a hyper user, a talented developer, and it's helping him be more effective and efficient in his work. But, we've done some analytics on how GitHub Copilot helps coders as an example. And it's making them faster and more efficient and able to do more with less. And I think, when we think about the time in which we find ourselves and there's so much opportunity, and it's this era of Copilot that enables us then to really start doing more with less. And that, I think, is the opportunity. It's the opportunity for all of us to enhance our abilities with that co-pilot on the side that's helping us out. But let's remember, it's the co-pilot on the side. It is the opportunity for those who are bringing that innovation and that creativity to bear that are really then, if they're freeing themselves to do that kind of work, then are really going to be able to propel forward.
And when you speak to university educators, what are some of their hopes and dreams for new technology, including AI? And what are some of their fears? And how do you respond to that feedback?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because let's start with the fears actually. The fears are they don't know. It's a time of insignificant change. So where do I start? How do I start? And I think it's we all have to kind of go back to school to use that metaphor because it is an opportunity and a new era. And so I encourage all of them to start with their own digital literacy. How do they develop their understanding and their ability to understand how AI might relate to political science and how it can shift the way we think about essays, to go back there, or the way that we can rethink the way coding can be integrated into a business program. I've seen a faculty person utilize some coding to help students develop with GitHub Copilot so they can develop out new cases so students can develop out that skill set, even though they won't be coders, but they'll know how to use those tool sets. And as that experimentation happens and having access to, I mentioned MS Learn so that faculty can go in when they need it, in just in time development, in bite-sized moments to go and develop their capacity. That's important to remove that fear of, I just don't know. And that's that opportunity, I think, where community of practice is a way that the sector has traditionally come at learning together. That tool, that ability to come together and learn together as a community is even more important. But the opportunity, I think, and why they're coming so openly and honestly to say, I need to learn, I need to understand how to use this technology is they see that they can create that more personalization for their students in the learning opportunities and also on campus, creating the opportunities for students to interact with student services in timely ways. And we've seen that done at a few institutions. These are the ways that we're able to make it more effective for students to have a seamless experience. And they're expecting a digital experience because they get it in other aspects of their life. So having that digital experience on campus is really important. And so I think that's where we're seeing the institutions and the faculty see they can empower and lift their students with the technology.
What would you say the Microsoft tool that university educators use the most? What are they leaning into and coming to you for advice and input on?
Yeah. The first one is how to create more collaborative learning experiences. And for that, we worked heavily with them around how they can leverage Teams to do so. Teams is, yes, video conferencing. It's also a collaboration ecosystem where students and faculty can be collaborating in real time together, where they have the OneNote notebook built right in so that they can be sharing and collaborating multimodal ways together, as well as creating channels for breakout groups and for novel ways of doing assessment. And we've seen this at a couple of universities. I mentioned University of New South Wales and their engineering program and the way they're creating more personalization. They're also rethinking the way they can leverage this collaborative environment to create assessments that support a group effort on an assessment methodology, which is really interesting to think about. Students who are going to go into the world of work and work on teams, how can we develop out that skill set now when they're going to be using these tools in the world of work? So this is an excellent example of how they're rethinking that collaboration, leveraging it for some projects and opportunities for students to work together, and then also using it from an assessment perspective. And what they love about it is it's another opportunity to remove barrier, whether that's with translation or with closed captioning. And some of them are also experimenting with the ability to summarize and take notes, so that, again, we can have opportunities for students who may not be able to take notes on their own because of barrier, that the tool is able to do that for them. So that's one of the top ones, in addition to many accessibility and inclusion tools that are built in across that ecosystem.
And when you hear from students about their experience, do they think that those technology tools are enhancing their learning, or do they feel it provides a social cohesion to their experience?
The social cohesion, especially when we're talking about learning, is a critical element. Learning is a team sport, and so that social cohesion really matters, those connection points. And we know the research on student engagement demonstrates that when there is connection and group work, that students do better when they can be learning together. So that's really an important aspect and why I get excited about these collaboration tools. But the other element, I spoke to some students at McMaster University who were sharing with me that OneNote changed the way they were able to engage in their learning, the way that they were able to, in multiple ways, capture the content, review the content, and demonstrate what they were capable of. These are, and I hear this across the board, whether it's at a university or at a college or a polytechnic. It's these tool sets that are really enabling of the students to engage in that learning. And they see that it's important. They see that it helps them in their learning, and they see that it's also helping prepare them for when they go to the world of work, that these are the tools that they're going to be using when they get there as well. So they can see the continuity through their full life cycle.
You've been incredibly generous with your time and unbelievably enlightening. I've spent part of this time imagining what it would be like to use um, the translate function to speak with someone in Inuktitut. That's a revelation for me. I'm going to ask you two more questions, and then we're going to head towards wrapping up, unless there's anything else you wanted to add. The first one is, when you look out in the horizon, and predicting the future is always hard. None of us saw the pandemic coming. There are all kinds of things, well, very few of us, things we can't predict. But what would you say the big ed tech trends are in the future, and what can we expect in 2024?
You know, again, this moment in time of digital transformation is really being energized by the opportunities of AI. And I think this is the one that we need to be keeping our eye on. It's the opportunity one for those AI tools that are built in that remove barrier, but also the opportunity to leverage these AI tools from that personalization perspective. And that's the one where I think we're going to start to see some very significant innovations starting to happen, whether that's in K-12 or in higher education. And we're starting to see it happen in pockets across the globe. In Canada, I think we can expect to see some institutions really stepping up with some of those innovations coming in the new year. It's an opportunity, I think, for them to really support students from the moment they enter their classrooms right through to graduation. And it's that AI tool set, because it's not just then what's built in, it's the way that they're able to uniquely design. And I think that's the thing that I get excited about with Microsoft, and the way that we're thinking about not just the co-pilots that are going to exist within GitHub or within Office as an example, but the institutions are able to build uniquely within our Azure OpenAI and cognitive services, unique opportunities for that personalization. And that gets me really excited. And we've seen some institutions also using machine learning to understand retention. Why are students dropping out? And how can they intervene to support them better? That to me is super exciting, because it means then that nobody gets left behind. And it's the technology that's enabling us to do that. So I think we need to be watching those elements of AI, the machine learning, the ability to personalize and create unique experiences, and the institutions that are going to be doing some of that. I think it will be the way that we see the next generation of higher education and K-12.
Very exciting. And now I'm going to ask you sort of more broadly, what are the things that you see going on in Microsoft Canada generally that you are most excited about, that we can sort of expect to see in 2024 or already happening? Even outside the education space, like just
Yeah.
cool stuff that's going on. Give us a little window into the future.
Yeah, we just made a bunch of announcements. I think the number is about 100 announcements at Ignite, our big event a couple of weeks ago. Some of them, I mean, most of them were absolutely mind-blowing. but one of them particularly sparked my imagination, and that was the marrying of augmented reality with Copilot and voice control of the Copilot. So imagine this, and it's happening today with mixed reality on the manufacturing floor, that you're able to see the innards of an engine and trying to understand where what has been the maintenance schedule, and you're able to interact with the Copilot, and the Copilot's able to show you which part needs to be changed so that the maintenance team is able to go in and do that without needing the specialist team. But the specialist team is able to chime in because of the D365 elements that are within the virtual and sort of the augmented reality experience to help with what's happening in the field. So, that to me is super exciting. This is going to change the game for manufacturing, but it's also, I think, eventually we can see how this can have an impact on healthcare. Remote healthcare is an example where with mixed reality, we're going to be able to see that impact happen. With voice control, also, we're able to maybe change the game for how we do medical training. So that with Copilot, we can maybe train how to do CPR in different ways. And so we've seen some of those examples starting to happen. I was just at our Toronto office in our technology center, where they have a demonstration with a mannequin and augmented reality, where you can do just that, is learn with the help of augmented reality how to save a life. So those to me are ways that we are going to absolutely change society, change it for the better, and help raise everybody up. And so I can't wait to see how this technology starts to evolve, and hoping that one day, sooner rather than later, I see it in education.
That sounds totally wild and exciting. I've been picturing myself doing virtual CPR, and I think that could be really brilliant in this country where we do have so many remote communities and we're so spread out. Listen, you have been incredibly generous and hugely informative. I've taken maybe 1,000 notes on things that I hope Maclean's can follow up on in the months to come. And I know that our robust audience joins me in thanking you for your time and attention and insights and your little window into the future, and everything you've learned from educators and students in your work. And thanks so much for your time today. I'm really grateful. I'm glad to have met you.
Thanks so much, Sarah, for having me. I really enjoyed this, and hope that folks are equally as excited about the digital transformation, the opportunities that are before us.
Your enthusiasm is totally contagious. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day and afternoon. Bye for now.